But yeah, today not so much. But there's cherry blossoms like right outside my window, so that's good.
Okay.
Morning waffles. I don't know what waffles is, but that's great.
Okay. Welcome everyone. I wanted to just go over the group norms real quick. Please take a moment if you can to edit your name to show where you're joining from, and we'd love to see your pronouns. It helps us kind of meet everyone where you are. Ask that you. I know that Ren plans a pretty interactive and presentation, so be ready to jump in with questions, but in the meantime keep your mics off when you're not. Keep your camera on if you're comfortable doing so, because I think that there's going to be a lot of stuff. Ren has been through I've been through a lot of trainings with Ren, and there's a lot of movement, and it's good to see. And she can give you feedback, I know, right there. We're going to practice both and thinking. It's both and thinking results in a collaborative mindset that allows for the validity of other perspectives and makes space for individual views in a way that they can coalesce into a solution that benefits all of us. So keep an open mind. Step up, step back is another mindset that we're going to be bringing, that just acknowledges that everyone's voice has equal value in a discussion. Most of the time, white men speak first and loudest. It's often an unconscious reaction and not intended to be offensive, but it is a constant reminder of systems of oppression that we have all internalized. So reflect on the energy and the space you create in conversations and make sure that everyone's voice is equally valued. I'm going to hand it over to Ren, who is a friend and honestly a hero. Mostly you are. The dedication and passion that you bring to making ultimate more like making it not just a life.
So yeah, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming online today. I'm Ren Caldwell, she, her, and I'm the owner of Strive and Uplift, which used to be Ren Fitness, and then we transitioned to be Strive and Uplift. And I wanted to talk with y'all today and hopefully give you some, not just some ideas and tips and tricks and things, but also a context for training for Ultimate. Especially one that relates to our current situation, which is obviously really different than what we have dealt with in the past. And we kind of need to band together and come up with some ideas around how we can keep our community together and keep our mindset in the right place to engage healthfully with movement. So as a part of this later on, I am going to sort of take you through a workout. That doesn't mean that you have to do a workout. If you want to just sit and watch, I'm going to be giving lots of cues, but I'm mostly going to be taking it through so that you can see some of the ideas that I'm talking about in action. So I am planning on mostly kind of just talking for a while, but please, if you have any like big questions, like just raise your hand so I can see, or I can see everyone on my screen except for the people that have their cameras turned off, which is fine. But yeah, anyway, just jump in if you need to, but I also want to make sure I have time at the end for chatting and answering any questions that come up in the middle. So yeah, I kind of wanted to start with just a brief overview of like our training philosophy for Ultimate. So I've been working with Ultimate players individually and on a team basis since 2012, and have learned and grown a ton through that process. I've added more people to my team that are smarter than me in certain areas, and we've kind of conglomerated an idea of a philosophy that's been informed by a lot of Seattle Ultimate, by a lot of really big pioneers that I've met online and worked with Adriano from VC, people like Mad Dog from Fury, Maddie Frey and I have had tons of conversations. I've worked a lot with Mauricio in Colombia. So I kind of, our philosophy is sort of accrued itself. And I'm really happy about where we are in terms of our ability to reach ultimate players at all levels of the sport. We really don't focus on elite ultimate players. We want everyone who plays ultimate to feel like they have hooks in to all of our material and can benefit from what we have to say. And we're also really passionate about coaching coaches, because that's coaching the people who are going to then coach the other people is a super efficient way of getting information across. And so I love doing coaching sessions with coaches. It's really fun. And I've been lucky enough to come into Disc Northwest sessions over the last few years and just have a chunk of time to talk to people who are like first time coaches about how do you get elementary school kids doing movement in a way that's not going to hurt them. And, you know, how do you deal with high schoolers who have different levels of athleticism and all that stuff. So our training philosophy, first of all, we come at it from a whole athlete perspective. I don't think there's any point in talking about strength training or track work in isolation. Being an athlete is so much more than just the things that you do in the gym. And there's so many more factors that are very different for different kinds of people and different for your economic situation, different for your class, your race, like everything affects your ability to train effectively and to feel at home with yourself as an athlete. And so it's something that we try to tackle through a bunch of different ways. We have clinics that live online and that we do in person on nutrition, on mental health, mental toughness, specific things around soft tissue and mobility that kind of feel like we put all those pieces together and then you have a sense of what it actually is to live as an athlete. So it's just something that we think is super important. And especially when we work with youth, we always emphasize this sort of whole athlete perspective, making sure everyone feels comfortable in their own voice and in their own body. Specifically when we work with teams that are made up of more women and girls, people who identify that way. There's so much baggage that comes along with that and so much bullshit that you have to work through in order to just feel like an athlete, period. And it feels to us like an incredible way to spend our time and energy to support the development of people's self-perspective as an athlete. So there's that part of our philosophy, which is basically at the heart of everything that we do. And it drives all of our decision-making in terms of how we create programming. And it drives all of our interactions with our players and our coaches as well. So then that kind of leads to a second idea, which is cyclical training. So we want to think of training as something that happens on a timeline. And that timeline is different based on when your season is. But the idea is that you need to train on a cycle. You can't always train for strength. You can't always train for power. You can't always train for conditioning. You need to be on a cycle of working on those things and then kind of repeating that in order to change up the stresses that you put on your body and also progress yourself in terms of those stressors. So starting off working and focusing on strength and building a strong foundation is really important before you focus on power, because power is going to require that you have that foundation of strength or else you risk injury. And then once you have that power, you can focus a little bit on metabolic conditioning. And then we just can kind of go back around again, and then we keep building our level. So all of our training is cyclical and is built around when you as an athlete are trying to peak, so that we don't have you doing a whole ton of heavy squats, the week before a tournament, because that just doesn't make any sense, right? Like that's not going to help you in your goals. So we really want to focus on where people are trying to go and what's the best, safest way to get them there. The rule number one of strength and conditioning is do no harm. And that's something that we take a lot of responsibility for in our programming. Some other programming might seem more exciting or more like intense and whatever. That's not what we are focused on. We're focused on the efficacy and on safety. And especially when you're putting programming online, I think it's really incredibly important to make sure that the things you're putting out there are accessible to people and aren't kind of promoting this idea that, you know, go hard or go home, you know, regardless of what your personal foundation is. So in terms of strength and stability, we really focus on sport-specific movement patterns. And we're going to talk about this a good deal more later, because that's kind of the main thing that we're talking about here. But basically what that means is that Ultimate is different from any other sport. It has different demands on the body. And we've spent a lot of time researching and experimenting and trying things out on Ultimate players of all levels and bodies and abilities. And that's really informed our approach to strength and stability work. And specifically, it's taught us a lot about Ultimate and about the things that Ultimate requires of the body and how to support those things. And that's our main focus as strength and conditioning coaches, is supporting on-field performance and reducing injury. So that's kind of our, that's everything that we think about, what we organize around. So the other thing that's really important to us, to Strive and Uplift as a business, as coaches, is accessibility. We really focus a lot in all of our sessions, in person or virtually, on making sure that we set the stage by doing, you know, check-ins with each other, asking for names, asking people to share pronouns if they feel comfortable doing so, and trying to connect with them on an individual level, because again, that's really important for just that whole athlete approach. But also it makes things feel more accessible to people, people that have different body types, people who have different, might go by pronouns that people wouldn't necessarily be like, oh yeah, of course. You know, it's really helpful. It makes them feel included. And that's incredibly important as just as a way to be, for everything to feel like it applies to you as an athlete, and that you feel comfortable moving your body in a space with other bodies. We also do a ton of modifications, regressions, progressions in all of our movements, which is really important for people who are differently abled or have a different way of moving and engaging, and different body types. So that's really important to us. We've also finally been able to implement, and it took us a long time just systems wise to figure it out, but we've implemented sliding scales for all of our memberships and suggested prices for all of our virtual offerings, because we just want anyone who wants to access this material and be a part of this training philosophy to be able to do so. And that's been something that it's something that I'm really proud of, and that I'm really excited to make more people aware of, because I think that the most important thing about any of this is that we're all able to do it together, and that it shouldn't matter what you can pay, and that the people that can pay more do, to help support the people that can't. So that's sort of our philosophy in a maybe slightly large nutshell. Sorry, I get carried away sometimes. So then the next thing I wanted to talk about is just how all of this is changing and has changed, and how we're adapting to the new situation that we find ourselves in. So obviously a lot of these concepts are practiced and were developed in physical spaces. So we have our gym in Seattle, which we're incredibly jazzed about, and it's beautiful and it's inclusive, and it feels great to be there. It feels great to work out there. And we kind of didn't realize how much we were sort of posting out on that, to have a lot of our values kind of living in the moment, until it was just taken away from us. I mean, obviously we're not in there now. We don't know when we'll be able to go back, and we don't know when we'll be able to go back in the way that we were. It might be a long time. And so what we're having to do is taking a lot of the work that we did in person in Ballard and then also in Boulder. Bert is out in Boulder and has several training spaces, one in Boulder, one in Denver, that she's been working out of for the past 2 years. So now we're having to transition. And so I'll send all these links out to you either in the chat or afterwards. I'll put them in this YouTube link. But one of the things that we've been doing is just creating all these all these clinics for people to kind of engage with when they're not able to go out and do stuff. But then also specifically looking at like at home workouts and options. We rented out all of our equipment. And so our gym is bare basically because it just has, you know, the floors and then like a couple little like baby 6-pound kettlebells that are really cute, but not super functional for most people. But all of our other equipment is with our members so that they can create their own routines at home. We started doing live virtual classes for our membership, which have been really fun. And I actually enjoy them a lot more than I thought I would. I thought I would hate it. Like this right here is weird to me. And so I'm still figuring it out, but I actually realized I can see really well. Like if people are moving and I just come up to the screen and do this, I can actually see enough to be able to coach people. And I was like, woo! So that was neat. And I wasn't expecting that. But so like just kind of training in the time of COVID-19 is very strange. And again, I have more to say about that later, but basically we're just trying to create a lot of options that are based in like sound training principles and not just like how many burpees can you do in 10 minutes, because that doesn't really fit in with our philosophy. And so our challenge has been, and I love challenges. Our challenge has been, how do we get even more creative with our workouts and our programming in ways that still completely come from our value-centered perspective. So we've had a really good time developing all those things, and we're still developing them all. So, okay, how do you train for strength and stability? And why is that important for Ultimate? So that's kind of the main thing of what I want to talk about. So first of all, there's very specific demands that Ultimate puts on the body. There's a huge metabolic load that happens. There's a lot of asymmetry in the way that the sport is, the way that the sport works and moves, right? You throw on one side, you pivot on one foot. Maybe you work to become a little bit more ambidextrous. I feel like I've seen so much more of that in the last like 5 years. And I would love it if I can take a little credit for it, but I don't know if it's me at all. But I feel like there's such a huge, like, I mean, obviously there's going to be huge differences right to left if you're only ever throwing with one side. We know how powerful that motion is, and we know what it requires in terms of, you know, mobility, in terms of core strength, and then the quick movements when you're pivoting, right? So the problem with that is that you're only doing that on one side, and then you try and run, which is supposed to be like this super symmetrical thing, right? And it's just not. If you've spent so much time working on your throws and perfecting your throws, everything is off. It's asymmetric. And so that can lead to a lot of potential for injury because one side of your core is stronger than the other. You're using it differently. It can lead to one leg feeling stronger. Mainly, it's usually your pivot, not your pivot foot. It's usually the foot that's stepping out that feels stronger, and the other leg feeling more stable because it's your pivot foot and it doesn't move. But then the problem with that is then you're trying to change directions, and either you're only changing directions off of the side that feels stronger, or you try and change directions off of the side that feels less strong, and maybe you get injured, right? And so there's all of this work that you need to do off the Ultimate field in order to balance out some of those asymmetries. Even if all we were doing was running in a straight line and throwing, we would still end up with knee pain. We'd still end up with lower back pain and hip instability because of that core difference and the difference in what our shoulders are doing, right? And that doesn't even get into injuries. Injuries are like a whole other I could talk for hours about injuries and how to rehab from them, but that's not this talk. The other thing to think about is all the different planes of movement that Ultimate takes place in, right? A lot of sports are just frontal plane, right? It's just about moving forward, or it's just about twisting. You know, something like golf, for example, is just 100% rotational power, right? But Ultimate has all of these things. It has lateral changes of direction. It has multiplanar changes of direction. It has elevation jumping. It has throwing, right? It has acceleration, deacceleration, reaccelerating in another direction, right? So it has all of these different planes of movement that your body needs to be comfortable in. And we actually just put together, it should be dropping, I don't know, tomorrow, I think, a thing for Disc Northwest about core integration and core work for Ultimate, and the fact that it has to be a global thing. You know, hanging out in planks is going to make you strong, but it's not going to make you strong in the ways that are going to translate into good on-field performance or reduce your injury risk, because this is not what we're doing on the field. We're doing every other fucking thing, but not that. And so planks are nice and fabulous and I love them, but like you've got to do more if you're going to actually train your body for Ultimate. So I wanted to talk a little bit about mobility and mobility's role in stability, because I think a lot of times we talk about them as if they're two different things. And I mean, they are, but they're inherently interrelated. So the way that mobility and stability works in the body and the way that I talk about it is starting from the ground up. So if you think about the joints in your body, your ankles are supposed to be mobile. Your knees are supposed to be stable. Your hips are supposed to be mobile. Your pelvis and low back are supposed to be stable. Your mid back is supposed to be mobile. Your shoulder blades are supposed to be stable, and your shoulders are supposed to be mobile. So it kind of goes up the body and it alternates between mobility and stability in terms of what your body, what those joints are for, what they are supposed to do. So one of the big things that I work on with Ultimate players is that because of past injuries and or just because of the demands of the sport, a lot of times we're asking the wrong joints to do the wrong things. So we're asking for stability from our knee joints because our ankles are stuck, because we had an ankle sprain 2 years ago that we didn't really rehab, right? Or we're asking our knees to be mobile because my hips are stuck from sitting at a desk all day and I didn't take the time to open them up and move them before I tried to run. And so we think that we have knee problems. We think that we have a joint issue, right? And really most often it's a stability issue. The fact that the knee is supposed to be stable and it can't because the stuff above or below isn't doing its job. And so one of the big roles of like soft tissue work and mobility work in what we do is in preparing the body to use the right joints for the right things through our warm-up and through specific like rolling and stuff like that. And also peppering in that mobility work into our programming so that if you do a set of squats, then you go and do some hip mobility stuff, right? Then that means hopefully your next set of squats, you're going to be able to get deeper into your hips and utilize your glutes more, as opposed to the stress kind of sliding forward into your knees or bumping up into your low back because your hips are stuck. So we work it in because what we're trying to do is really groove those movement patterns in a way that's going to support your movement on the field. So we use soft tissue work at the beginning. My big thing that I tell people who are coaching teams is I love to see a team that does team soft tissue work, 3 to 5 minutes worth at the beginning of every practice. And that's how you start your practice before your warm up, is you all just get in a circle and you all just roll what you need to roll. And it's been incredibly effective for working with youth teams for me, Especially if you do just like a quick, what I do, okay, so when I work with a youth team, the first thing I do with them is soft tissue work, because it is the best way to get them into their bodies and to get them understanding what their asymmetries are. And so we'll do some rolling, and then we'll do like a test retest. So it's like, we'll roll out their calf, right? And then I'll sit there and I'll be like, okay, so sit there and flex your feet and notice if one foot goes further than the other. And now point your feet and notice if one foot goes further than the other. And it always does. And they're like, whoa, this one that I just rolled has so much more mobility. And I'm like, exactly. Now let's do the other side. And so we just do that going up the body. And then it gives them so much information about where they hold tension and stress and how beneficial it is to actually work on those things before we go do anything else. Because a lot of people do soft tissue work at the end, which is also a great time to do it, but that doesn't help us for the workout. So when we think about strength, when we think about stability for ultimate, having joints that do the things that they're supposed to be able to do is an integral part of that. We can't just start talking about single leg balancing, right? Because of course that's something that's going to help you with stability, but it's not going to help you as much as it could if everything is junked up and the wrong things are working. So that's kind of where I use soft tissue mobility stuff. And again, like I said, sort of weaving the mobility things into the middle of it. So one of the things that we focus on with our whole athlete kind of approach, whether we're doing in-person stuff or virtual stuff or whatever, is we do different kinds of workouts. So we have lifting workouts. A lot of the times we'll start with working on fundamental movements, fundamental movement patterns, hinging, squatting, pushing, pulling, and teaching people how to access the right musculature when they're doing those things, and just troubleshooting form stuff. So we'll kind of start, most people will start there. If people are coming in fresh without having ever done anything, we'll have them start really basic, like, let's look at your squat. If I'm doing a virtual consult for someone to do like long distance personal training or long distance programming, the first thing I do is a FMS, a functional movement screen, where I look at them squatting, I look at their trunk stability, I look at their hamstring and hip mobility, all those kinds of things, because that's information I have to have if I'm going to program for them, because I need to know where their bodies are, right? So we start with those kinds of things in terms of lifting. We also do a lot of running programming. And our running programming is really specific. Again, it's cyclical, but it's specific to the ultimate movement patterns. So we don't have a ton of like long, slow runs. We also don't have a ton of like 400s or 800s, because those aren't things that we do in ultimate. So we have a lot of changing introductions. We have a lot of shorter sprints. We have a lot of intervals, right? We try to make the training that we're doing mimic the demands of ultimate, because again, we feel like that's going to translate better to what ultimate players need on the field. And then we also do a lot of these clinics where we talk about nutrition for tournaments. You know, team nutrition for tournaments is a great clinic that I'm super excited. We've worked with a nutritionist to kind of develop the whole structure of that. And so that's really helpful, I think, because it just brings in this idea of being able to plan and actually say, oh, okay, like this is what my body needs versus what this person's body needs. And this is how, as a team, I can support this. This is how, as a coach, I know how to get the right kind of snacks and the right sort of team support going on. It's really important for that. And then now, especially more than ever, we're really focusing on movement patterns and whole athlete support in general, like my Strive and Uplift is, because we don't know when we're going to be back, right? We don't know when we're going to be back on the field. And it's a really scary thing for a lot of players. And it's a scary thing for us as coaches, because it's difficult to try to figure out, well, what can I do? What are our options? What are things that we can, how can we engage with our players right now? How can we support them right now? So that sort of brings me to kind of the last thing that I wanted to talk about was like, here's some tools that we've developed and that we're using to do that, to help people make those connections. So first of all, we developed last year with the PUL, we developed some gym-free programming. And these are workouts that don't require any equipment, but that are still cyclical training. They're still working on strength, power, metabolic, but they're doing it in this way that doesn't use any equipment, doesn't require anything. And so that's now a part of all of our memberships. But we developed it largely for accessibility reasons because we were working with the PUL, and PUL teams, obviously everybody comes from all over the place. They don't have a lot of ability to practice together in person. And so we wanted to develop something that they could use regardless of what their equipment situation was, whether they had access to a gym or not, and something that the team could do together. And we also have been working with, we're working with Team Venezuela and have been working with Colombian teams. And we were realizing that a lot of our videos in our exercise library relied on cueing that we were giving verbally in the videos, which is great if you're a native English speaker, right? Or if you have the ability to listen to a video while you're watching it, which a lot of people don't. And so we realized that this is an accessibility issue. And so we're actually completely overhauling and reshooting our entire exercise library with the format of having the cues just written down in our Vimeo. So like the exercise is just shown from multiple angles and whatever progressions, regressions are needed. But then all of the cueing is written so that it's easily translatable. And so I felt really excited because I was like, oh, now no one has access to equipment. Good thing we have this gym-free programming developed. And it was just one of those things because I saw all these gyms around me freaking out and scrambling and trying to like create online programming. And I was like, I think we're pretty good. So I was psyched to have that, and I am psyched to have that. But then the other thing that we've added recently is different virtual options for team training, because we've had to ask ourselves the question, like, what is it that makes something feel like ultimate and will fill some of the role and some of the hole that is left by not being able to play ultimate right now, but still aligns with our training philosophy. So the reason a lot of ultimate players do things like CrossFit, which is, I have problems with CrossFit on a high level, but there's a lot of boxes that are doing great things. So I'm not going to trash CrossFit. But the reason why a lot of players gravitate to that is because it kind of feels like ultimate. You know, it's intense. You're going out there, you're doing the things. It's accessible. You know, you don't need a lot of equipment, right? And you feel afterwards, you're just like, oh, like you feel zonked in the way that you do after a practice. And so that's the reason a lot of people do workouts like that. Our thing has always been, okay, like how can we create those things and create that same feeling, but do it in a way that really honors the fact that we believe that there's specific movement patterns that ultimate players need to work on. There's this whole athlete idea that we need to keep at the forefront and at the center of our work, that values rest and recovery, that values mobility work, right? How can we bring those things together in a way that still fills some of that hole? And so we've developed some new ideas virtually, because a lot of the things that we were doing, we just can't do because they were all in person. So we have these new options for teams that they can just contact us and figure out what they need, but then we can set up weekly training sessions with them. If they want to do a weekly session where we all get on a big Zoom call and I lead them through a workout and I look at their form and whatever, and they can interact. And it's a way for them to be together as a team now that we can't do that in person. And to do something as a team that they feel like is going to make them better ultimate players and actually prepare them to go and do ultimate when we're able to do ultimate again. So that's what we've been kind of developing, and I'm really excited about. We're we've been testing it out with some Seattle teams in the last week or so, And we're going to just kind of announce it later this week that this is a thing that's available for people. But super jazzed about that because working with teams is like my favorite thing ever. And there's just so much uncertainty right now. It's like, okay, well, we can't hold tryouts. Like, what does being on this team mean if we can't have tryouts? Like, is it more about like the past community? Is it more about people who are interested in the team? And so we're having these conversations with the leaders and the coaches of the teams to try to help them figure out what it means and how to stay connected to their community and how to work on these movement patterns in a way that feels good and allows for their community connection to even get stronger during this time. So we're doing all those things. I would love to show you a little bit of what we're doing. I'm also teaching training for ultimate classes, which are just open to anybody who wants to take them virtually. I've had people from all over the world in a couple of my classes, which has been really fun. And those aren't team centered, but they are centered on movement, movement for ultimate, and in all these concepts that we've talked about. So now that I've kind of talked about all these ideas around strength and stability and mobility and core integration and asymmetry and all of those things, I would love to just show you in kind of fast motion what a workout is and just talk through the ideas. And then I would love to have a little bit of time for questions. So I definitely spent longer talking than I wanted to. So I'm sorry about that. So I'm going to move over here so that you can see what I'm doing. And if you have the ability to move and want to move while I'm doing stuff, move yourself. If you want to just listen, that's also totally fine. But if you want to kind of move and groove, sweet. Okay, cool. So you're coming with me. I also have an office for the first time in my life, which is really weird, but kind of cool at the same time. Okay, perfect. Can you hear me okay? Thumbs up? Okay, great. Okay, so this is just one of the workouts that we have done with in the Training for Ultimate class. So the first thing we do is 3 to 5 minutes of soft tissue work. So I will use a foam roller or a lacrosse ball, and we basically just all hang out like this, and we talk about, we do our check-ins, we share pronouns, we roll around and do our stuff. Let me see if this is any better. Is that better? Whoa, now I'm really yellow. Never mind. Okay, so we talk through and do all that stuff. So we make sure we get our soft tissue work in. So we're ready to ask our joints to do that whole mobility, stability thing we were talking about. And then I do an inchworm, which I love, is one of my favorite movements because it's a full body, like top to bottom thing. So if you want to do one with me, you can. But the idea with this is to get the breath into the body and to start recognizing places where we're tight and where we might need to ask ourselves for a little more openness. So you kind of start at the top and you roll yourself down, soft knees, and then we walk out to a plank. So when we're in this plank position, we take a moment to kind of hang out here, pull the belly button towards the spine, drop the shoulder blades down, lengthen the back of the neck, and just kind of connect our core in this tall plank position. And we do like right foot to the outside. I emphasize really opening up the hip flexor here and then doing a big reach. So already we're getting into rotational movement. We're getting into opening up the front of our hips. I'm trying to bring the breath into my rib cage. And then we do the other side. I was going to put my hair up, but I didn't. So this is going to be extra fancy today. And again, this is an opportunity to notice any asymmetry right to left. My left hip is always tighter on me, but hopefully after I do a few inchworms, that starts evening out. And then we do a pushback and stretch to the back of our body. So this helps bring awareness into the whole posterior chain. We usually hold a lot of tightness back there, especially if we're sitting a lot. And then I walk the feet towards the hands, soft knees, and then I roll all the way up and do a little chest opening at the top. Chest opening is one of those things that like we just totally don't do in our normal everyday lives, but it's so helpful for getting the shoulder blades dropped back in the right position. So we would do a few of those things. And then we have a few core things that we do after that. So again, one of the big things that creates strength, that creates stability, is our core integration. It's really important for our core to be connected. Core is like here to here, right? So we don't think of it as just six pack. It's the whole darn thing. So it's really important for it to be connected so that our hips can be mobile, right? And our pelvis can stay stable. Pelvic instability is one of the big reasons why we have low back pain. And again, that happens a lot when our hips aren't mobile and can't do their thing. So knowing that, we kind of wake up the core in a couple different ways. So we do a little chest lift with a rotation where we work on having a little space under our lower back, lifting up without collapsing that space. So I don't press my back down. I keep that neutral spine, because when we run and when we change directions, we do it hopefully with a neutral spine. So why would I train in a flat back position if that's not the position we use on the field, right? So I'm lifting, I'm going to focus on rotating side to side, staying up really high, and then coming back down. So I'm doing a few of those. That helps open things up. You can see how this is really good for preparing for throwing, to be able to twist from your mid back and get that mid back mobility going, but connected to your core. We do some leg lifts again. So we're doing a similar thing, but trying to focus on the hips and how they move as connected to the core. So again, when I'm bringing my foot down, I'm not arching my back, right? I'm staying neutral and bringing my foot, boop, like that. Okay. So again, my job there is to notice the difference right to left. A lot of people will have a huge difference because of the core asymmetry, right? And so just noticing how that relates to their hip function. I'll do some bridges to wake up my butt. The butt needs to be woken up usually, because if you're sitting a lot, it's just not doing anything. So you'll roll all the way up, and then I was just doing a few pulses here. I have 800 million ways to wake up glutes. This is just one of them, to really focus on extending my hips by engaging my glutes and not flaring my rib cage out. So all this stays connected, and I'm engaging my glutes to move up and down. Okay, so it's not just, what we're trying to do is wake up all the things that we want to be working, basically, and just sort of move through those. And then the last one is a frog, which is a mobility thing. So this is one of my favorites for ultimate, because everyone's so locked up in their hips, and this is that external rotation. So it's just moving forward and back with a neutral spine in that position. One of my other favorites is 90-90s, because you're working internal and external rotation. And this is another one where you will really notice a difference right to left in terms of how it feels and how far your knees can go down in either direction. Does that make sense? So that is our warm up. So that's what we are doing to get ready to move more. And then I just had, for this one, I just had a couple supersets of different plank variations with movement, and different kinds of lunges in different planes. And again, all the workouts are different. This is just one of them. But what I was really focusing on in this workout was the core integration and how that goes in, how that fits into moving in all these different ways. So the lunge matrix that we do is working on different planes. So we have a forward one where we're staying really tall and working on deceleration, absorbing force. And then we take that same leg back behind us. And then this one is moving forward, body forward, knee forward. So it's a difference from staying really tall and stopping that energy, decelerating, and then moving, sorry, I'm running into walls, and then letting this knee come forward, body come forward, working on acceleration. So decel, excel. And I really encourage people to make a big difference in what their body's doing. So one is absorbing force and trying to slow down. The other one is preparing to spring forward. So again, bringing in those ultimate specific movement patterns into the workout. You can always add weights for those to make them harder, right? but we would just do a certain number on each side. And then the next one of those is a side, like a lateral movement. So for these, I specifically say, get your foot outside and send your hip back. So your knee and your ankle, knee, and hip are all in a line, as opposed to being on top of yourself, you're on a diagonal. Because what we're trying to do is get ready to cut. You don't cut from underneath you, you cut from out here. So we have to train your hip, we have to train your pelvic stability in this position where you're on this diagonal, right? So we do that, and then we go across and we do a little curtsy. So this is faking forehand, right? This is handler movement right here. So we're going out and we're going forward, keeping the hips forward the whole time. So that's that kind of motion. The other one we do is external, where we drop straight down in the middle. And then internal, we bring our knees together, which feels super weird. I kind of explain this as like, I gotta pee, I gotta pee, I gotta pee, right? And then this one's like, oh, thank God, which is not, maybe the most elegant way to describe it, but you get the point. So again, we're working on glute engagement. We're working on hip mobility, pelvic stability in all of these different movement patterns that you will find yourself in with Ultimate. And you can make those things harder by adding weights, by slowing it down. You can work on powering out of those positions. So the way it works in this workout is I had people do the forward and back lunges, and then we did a plank with rotation. So we were down here, we did like Wonder Woman arms and wide feet, and we just did a rotating plank. But where I'm really focusing on my whole body moving together, as opposed to sending my hips and then peeling off. So basically asking for shoulder mobility, scapular stability, because that's important, right? And then that ability to move and change directions while keeping everything stable in my core. And then we got up and did another lateral crossover set. And then we did another set of these. And then we did our open close and then another set of those. So it's just kind of supersetting things that require different things from the body, but that you can do together, just to keep the pace moving and to keep things operating well together. The second set, I'll just run through real quick because I know I'm so sorry, y'all. I just talk way too much. It's because I'm excited. So the second set is a clock skater squat and a running side plank. And I really want to show you both of these, especially the running side plank, because it absolutely destroyed Saturday's class. And I felt sort of bad about it, but it's a good one to know. So the clock skater squat is working on stability, single leg stability in all these different planes. Okay, so we're going to send our hip back, touch our toe, touch our toe, touch our toe, kind of going out around in this like clock pattern, right? But for every one of those, I'm sending my hip back. So I don't get to just do this because I'm going forward with my leg. I have to send my hip back, stabilizing my glute, push up through my heel and my glute every single time in order to get that movement. But you'll really notice, especially stability-wise, the difference right to left, and also just how comfortable you are getting down low, right? There's a big difference a lot of times on your, even if it's your leg that's more stable, there's a big difference in how it feels to you. So then the other one in the set is that running side plank, which again, I just want to show you because it's kind of mean. But there's different, you can have your knees down or up for these, and all of these I give modifications for in the workout. But you can have your knees down, hips, knees, shoulders in a line right on top of your shoulder. So you can just be here. So level one is just bringing your knee up and holding your knee, this knee elevated. Level two is doing a running motion. So driving this knee forward and this elbow back, boom, right? But doing that without moving my hips. So I'm working on that pelvic stability and the core strength. And then of course, level three is just doing the same thing, but from your feet. So the mean part of this is that we did it for 45 seconds on per side, and we did 3 sets of it. So again, we would do these clock skater squats, and it was like, okay, catch your breath, like find your hip mobility, get nice and low. And now it's running side plank time. But the thing that I like about it is that it absolutely mimics things you do on the field, and it helps you feel how your core can engage in those movements. So it's really fun. And then the finisher that we did was we did Tabatas, which is one of my favorite intervals, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. And we did push-ups for 20 seconds. We did bicycles, which are these bad boys. And we did skater hops. So just lateral skate, 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 right? So getting that footwork, getting that movement. One of the things that I love about Tabatas is that to me, they really feel like ultimate, because you'll oftentimes have about 20 seconds of running around before there's a stoppage, before there's like a thing where you get to catch your breath for a second, and then you have to be right back on. And the thing that I like about adding skater hops into something like this is that a lot of the movement that we have to do as ultimate players is all about being explosive safely over and over and over again, which is not anything that any other sport requires, because it's insane. And then you do it like 4 games in a day, and then that's really insane. And so if you're going to prepare your body to do that, you have to ask your body to do these dynamic, explosive, plyometric-y things, even when you don't want to, because you're really tired. Okay, I would love to. Okay, wait, I don't want to leave meeting. I did something weird. Help. Okay, that's okay. Okay, good, we're back now. Sorry, technology and me feels bad, man. So the only other thing I wanted to say was that all this stuff that we're doing is stuff that we want you to use. We want you to engage with these things. We want you to find them helpful. We want you to ask us questions. We want you to tell us what we're missing. We want to get better, and we want to help in this situation as much as we can, because this is a freaking tough situation and no one's happy with it. But we really do think that there's a way to keep moving and training for ultimate during this time. We think we've figured some parts of it out, and we really want to share it with you. So I'll give all the links to Jude and everything. We can put them on the YouTube thingy. But the bottom line is we have a lot of good resources available, and hopefully you can feel that they're accessible price-wise, especially since we have sliding scale and stuff available. But yeah, be super psyched if y'all have any questions. Would love to address anything. But also just thanks for, I swear, I always think, oh my gosh, like an hour is so long, and then it's just not. So yeah, does anyone have anything that they want to ask? Yeah, Sam. Oh, I can't hear you.
Youth players train.
Okay, sorry, can you say that one more time? You were out for a second. Go ahead.
Okay. My question's about helping youth players train. In an ideal world, they would have the resources and the knowledge and everything to do it on their own. Mm-hmm. But if, for whatever circumstances, the only time they are working out is when you're together as a team and you already have limited practice time, how might you incorporate little bits of workout into practices so that you can make the most of it?
No, perfect. I love that question. That's something that I get a lot. So what I really focus on with youth players is, again, teaching them the things that they need to know that are most important for them to know, and finding a way to work those into practice. So like the soft tissue stuff, like if you have somebody that can come in and teach that to them, or if you feel comfortable teaching that to them, spend 15 minutes on one day teaching them, here's the different places and how to get them, and then building that into your warm-up, I think is one of the best things that you can do. I think also one thing I love is adding in stability challenges and little games and stuff into warm-ups and drills. And so, you can do the okay, you're throwing forehands, but you're just throwing them standing on one leg, and now you're gonna throw backhands, you know, standing on one leg, or, you know, you're gonna throw and then immediately, you know, do a little sprint this direction. I love using ladders. I have a ton of drills that are so fun to do with teams.